during sexual arousal or in the breast, there will be vascular engorgement of the breast, and this leads to erection of nipples due to contraction of smooth muscle fibers in the nipples. There's also increment of the clitoris size and length due to increased blood flow. So this is very similar to the penis. And there is increased blood flow to the vagina, and the vaginal epithelium is lubricated by mucus. So this actually assists in the entry of the penis into the vagina. So sexual arousal ends with orgasm. So this is accompanied by pleasurable feelings as well as many physical events, okay, such as contraction of the skeletal muscle in almost all parts of the body. There is an increase in the heart rate as well as in the BP, and transient rhythmical contraction of the vagina and the uterus. Okay, this is very brief. Okay. So people actually experience orgasm, but very brief changes in the and pleasurable feelings. So after sexual arousal, after orgasm, if the sperm enters the vagina and goes through the cervix, for pregnancy to occur, introduction of sperm must occur between 5 days before and 1 day after ovulation. That is why the calendar method is very important for those that are either wanting to get pregnant or not, or do not want to get pregnant. Okay, for those wanting to get pregnant, they want to know the ovulation for them, for the sperm to be able to fertilize the egg. For those not wanting to get pregnant, of course, they want to avoid that from happening. Why pregnancy occurs, why fertilization occurs, needs to occur between 5 days before and 1 day after ovulation is because the sperm, even though it's capable of fertilizing the egg up to 4 to 6 days following ejaculation into the vagina, the ovulated egg remains viable for only between 24 to 48 hours. Okay, so timing is of essence here. That means ovulation, timing of ovulation needs to be known for fertilization to occur for those wanting to get pregnant. So how is the egg transported? Let's say we take a look at the ovaries on the right hand side here. Okay, upon ovulation, the egg is released onto the surface of the ovary. Okay, so you can see that the fallopian tube has the opening, and at the opening there are fimbriae, finger-like projection from the fallopian tube. So the egg is released onto the surface of the ovary. The fallopian tube actually takes up the egg, okay, by combined actions of the fimbriae at the end of the fallopian tube. Okay, so the fimbriae starts to contract, and then together at the same time, there's also beating of the uterine tube cilia. So like the fallopian tubes are both lined with cilia, so smaller finger-like projections in comparison to the fimbriae, and their movement or contractions actually assist the transportation of the egg from the ovary into the fallopian tube. So the slow movement in the uterine tube driven by the cilia means that it takes 4 to 5 days for the egg to reach the uterus. To reach the uterus. So meaning that by the time the egg reaches the uterus, it is no longer viable for fertilization. Okay, that is why fertilization needs to occur within the fallopian tube. So that is the transportation of the egg from the ovary into the fallopian tube into the uterus. with this sperm, it comes from the vagina, goes through the cervix, and climbs up or swims up the uterus into the fallopian tube. Okay? Okay, so as I said earlier, fertilization needs occur in the uterine tube due to the short-term viability of the egg. So, egg is only viable for only between 24 to 48 hours. However, the sperm is capable of fertilizing the egg between 4 to 6 days following ejaculation into the vagina. So for fertilization to occur, we need to know about sperm transport and capacitation. What happens during ejaculation is that the fluid pressure helps to push the sperm to pass through the vagina into the cervix. The sperm then swims through the cervical mucus. So the mucus consistency depends upon estrogen. Okay, it should be clear and watery, not viscous. From the uterus, the sperm then goes into the uterine tube. And this is via sperm's own propulsion as well as it is being assisted by the uterine contractions. Okay. Okay. Throughout the travel, there is a huge mortality rate of the sperm. Why that is so is because one, the vagina is very acidic. It has a very high acidic environment for protection against yeast and bacterial infection. Okay, so that is the protection from the female against foreign substances from entering it, and also looking at the size of the sperm. The journey from the vagina through the uterus into the fallopian tube is a very lengthy journey, with the length being very long, length of the journey being very long. Of course, it also needs a high energy requirement. So basically, out of the millions of sperm in the ejaculant, only about 100 sperm will reach its final destination, which is the egg within the uterine tube. Okay? But along the journey, changes in the sperm occur, which is the sperm capacitation process. Okay? Which I have discussed earlier last week. Okay? So in the uterine tube, as I said earlier, the egg remains viable for only 24 to 48 hours. So fertilization occurs in the uterine tube, which is the fusion between a sperm and the egg. So zona pellucida glycoproteins, the protective layer of the egg, has receptors for sperm surface proteins. Okay. So the sperm, all the numerous sperm binds simultaneously on the zona pellucida. This actually triggers the acrosome reaction. And the plasma membrane of the sperm head is altered, therefore exposing the acrosomal enzymes to zona pellucida. So the sperm digests a pathway through the zona pellucida, and the sperm together with the tail will then enter the egg. So as I have mentioned, many sperm try to enter the egg, but once the first sperm able to penetrate the entire zona pellucida and reaches the membrane plasma of the egg, it starts to fuse with the membrane and passes into the egg's cytoplasm. Okay. The fertilized egg is now called the zygote. But zygote viability, of course, depends upon preventing entry of additional sperm, which is a process known as polyspermy. So how this occurs is there occur changes in the membrane potential of egg cell membrane, as well as inactivation of glycoprotein receptor and hardening of the zona pellucida, which means that once the first sperm reaches its destination and is able to penetrate the egg, the glycoprotein receptor will be inactivated, which means that polyspermy does not occur. Other sperm won't be able to act upon the glycoprotein receptor, and no more so their entry will be prevented. Okay. Also, we know that zona pellucida starts to harden, so it makes it harder for the other sperm to enter the zona pellucida. Okay, so once there's the entry of the first sperm, okay, the egg will be induced to complete its second meiotic division over the next few hours. Okay, so the two sets of chromosomes now, 23 coming from the egg after having gone through the second meiotic division, and 23 from the sperm. We know this each sperm carries 23 chromosomes, as we can as I have discussed last week. Each spermatid carries 23 chromosomes. They will be surrounded by distinct membranes, and there is the creation of the pronuclei, which starts to migrate to the center of the cell. DNA of chromosome of both pronuclei then start to replicate, and the pronuclear membranes break down and undergo a mitotic division. So this first mitotic division marks the completion of fertilization. That means there is the creation of the fetus. Okay. So this is what happens when the egg is fertilized. What happens when the egg is not fertilized? The egg will disintegrate and become phagocytosed by the cell lining of the uterus. Okay, I think I shall stop here. We shall continue again tomorrow morning. So will I be seeing you in the lecture hall? So I'll see you in the lecture hall tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock, yeah? And we'll finish our reproductive system physiology. So thank you everyone for your attention. Hopefully I have the chance